Let's look at the another move, which is knight to c3. Against knight to c3, we are going to stick with our plan pretty much similar. So we are going to play knight to d7, and again here there are two moves has been played. In one of my game, my opponent responded with bishop cross c6, and after b cross c6 he played bishop to f4, and here I capture this knight. And again white has few options. If white plays d cross e4, then after queen to b4, attacking the bishop as well as b2, white game will become very passive. So that's why it's unlike that you are going to face d cross e5. So most logical move looks like bishop cross e5, attacking the queen, but here black can play again the similar concept, which is queen to g6, attacking the c2 and giving up the c7, which is anyway it's a double pawn. So in one of my game, my opponent responded with the move castling on the king side, and I grabbed the opportunity to take this pawn, and after queen to f3 I played the move e6, and here my opponent captured the c7 and I played bishop to e7, and now he played inaccurate move, which is rook a to c1. This is what happened when your opponent doesn't have any clue and he just randomly go for attacking your piece. Here I continue with very energetically. So I first of all play bishop to g5, attacking the rook, and my opponent played rook c to e1. Instead of rook c to e1, if he would have played bishop to f4, then the very simple will be castling on the king side. This line pretty much win the piece outright. So white has to play knight to e2. Afterwards we are going to play bishop to e4, attacking the queen, and after queen to g3 we are going to capture this bishop. And no matter how white recapture, white will lose a piece. So for example, if knight cross f4, then very simple will be rook takes, and please note queen cannot capture the rook because at the end it will be mated. So that's why this line is winning outright for the black. So that's why in the game my opponent responded with rook c to e1, but this is again one kind of losing mistake, because now we can play bishop to d3, attacking the rook which is stuck on f1, and the only way to defend this rook is knight to e2. But after very simple rook to f6, attacking the queen, and after queen to g3 we have a very simple move, which is bishop to d2, and something is going to fall. In the game my opponent desperately tried queen to d6, but after king to f2 and the two rooks are connected, something will definitely drop from the white camp. So that is how you should respond if your opponent plays bishop cross c6 and bishop to f4. Instead of bishop cross c6, your opponent can immediately try bishop to f4 at this point, but now we can simply capture this knight. And again white has two responses. If white capture with the d pawn, then black has this fantastic move, which is queen to b4, attacking two spots, so bishop on f4 as well as the g2. And here white has a two options. So in the first game my opponent tried bishop cross d7, but after very simple bishop cross d7 the threats remain same. So my opponent decided to play bishop to d2, but after very simple queen to c4, stopping the castling, and b3 I simply drop my queen to the c5. And after castle on the king side, the planning of the black is very simple. Black wants to play the e6 and then castle on the queen side with no problem at all. So bishop to d7 doesn't create anything. In another game my opponent tried queen to f3, so supporting this bishop I played first of all c6, attacking the bishop, and after a3, which has a cunning idea that if, for example, if I capture like this, then white can play a wonderful move, which is rook to a2, and that queen is a goner. So of course I didn't fall for that, so I played queen to c5, and after b4 I simply drop my queen back to the b6, and now white has to deal with this threat of c captures bishop. So my opponent plays bishop to a4, but after very simple e6, castling on the king side, and bishop to e7, my opponent plays rook to e1. But after I castle shot, it's time to have a look who has the better position. And please note, not only black has a wonderful pawn structure on the queen side, but black also has open F file, and fortunately the queen is sitting there. So this is again a wonderful position for black. So that was about d cross e5. Now most likely your opponent is going to play bishop cross e5. Against this I'm recommending that you should play queen to g6, our familiar transition. And here white has a few options. Let's look at the first option, which is the but obvious. What happens if white is going to capture the loose d5 pawn? So knight cross d5, so it has a threat of knight cross c7, but this can be parried with a fantastic move, which is queen cross g2. So attacking the rook, attacking the knight. So first obvious move is knight cross c7, but here we can play king to d8, and after knight cross a8 we are going to capture this rook, and after king to e2, queen captures queen, rook captures queen, and knight captures e5, d captures e5, and king to f8. You can see white will lose a piece because that knight will not come out. So that is the trick exists in knight to d5 line. The other two moves can be played is bishop cross d7. Well, here we are going to capture with the king, and again if knight cross d5, then queen to b2. This time white doesn't have even check, and instead of knight cross d5, if your opponent plays queen to f3 attacking the pawn, then we can simply play e6, and after castle and bishop to d6, black has no problem at all. And please note that white is also has a loose pawn on c2. And the final third move white can try is this very simple looking castling on the king side. But after this we can simply play the move c6 attacking the bishop, and after bishop to a4 we can play the move knight cross e5, and after d cross e5 we can play e6, and look at, we have a wonderful pair of bishop with a very solid structure. So there is no need to go further. The simple idea is bishop can either goes to the c5 or e7, and then the next moment black can castle on the king side with a wonderful bishop pair with the open f file for the attack. So that is all about knight to c3 move. Now the third move I want to consider is bishop cross c6 immediately, and after b cross c6, if your opponent plays bishop to f4, then this line will be a transposition, which we are going to see soon. So the another bird obvious looking move is castling on the king side, and here I'm suggesting that you should play knight to d7. So pretty much all of this line can be easily met with knight to d7, and here there are three moves has been tried. The first move tried, which is most obvious one, bishop to f4, but again this one we can met with knight cross e5, and d cross e5 doesn't make any sense because we can play queen to b6 and that pawn has been misplaced. Also it can be locked with the move e6. So the most logical reply is bishop cross e5, and now again our familiar transition, which is queen to b6. And here in one of my game my opponent responded with bishop cross c7, and I responded with bishop cross c2, and queen d2 has been placed. Instead of queen to d2, if your opponent plays queen to e2, then bishop d3 will nab the rook. So your opponent has to be careful over here. And here I responded with the move e6, and after knight to c3 I challenged the queen with the move queen to d3. My opponent responded with queen to f5, and here I responded with bishop to e7, and now he played rook to e1. So it looks threatening for a moment, but actually it's not, because now we can play queen to f5 supporting the pawn, and if your opponent insists to attack on e6 with the move queen to e3, then first of all we can hit this bishop, and after bishop goes to the g3 we can simply play king to f7, and black covered everything. The further game goes like this. So my opponent plays rook to c1, but after bishop to g5, which is a very good move, it forced the f4 move from the white, which white doesn't want to play, and black can play bishop to f6. And the further game goes like this. So my opponent responded with the move queen to e2 attacking the bishop, but after very simple bishop to d3, my threat is bishop cross d5. So my opponent parried with bishop to f2. After that I played bishop to b5, and because he got annoyed by this bishop, my opponent captured this bishop, and after pawn recapture, we don't need to go further. Although the material is balanced, black has a attacking bishop and white has a very passive bishop, and finally I managed to win this game. So that was the first move. If your opponent plays bishop to f4, now instead of bishop to f4, in another game my opponent tried rook to e1, but again I can capture this knight, and please note, if d captures, then queen g6, and black position is very fine. So of course the most logical reply is rook cross e5. Afterwards I played again queen to g6, and here my opponent responded with knight to a3, protecting that pawn, and I played the move e6. Sometimes black can also capture this knight, but in this game I didn't. So my opponent played after c3, I played bishop to d6, attacking the rook, and after rook to e1 I simply castle on the king side. And now it's white turn to show up what is get. In the game my opponent responded with bishop to e3, but after very simple bishop to h3, the game finished very quickly. So you can see this rook is stopping queen to come to the f3, and as the g3 has been played, it can be simply made with the move queen to e4. And now how the white is going to defend this. So that is one way. If your opponent plays rook to e1, the final move tried is the nature looking move f4, but again we can capture this knight, and again white has the only choice, which is f cross e4. If your opponent plays d cross e5, then the very simple is queen check, and after king to h1 we can simply capture this pawn, and white will be a pawn down for nothing. So that's why f cross e5 is pretty much forced. But again we can play queen to g6, and idea is capturing the c2. And the funny enough is, in one of my game, my opponent played the move c3, and that can be made with losing a piece with bishop captures b1. So that's why c3 is impossible. So only logical move is knight to a3. Afterwards we can play the move e6, and after c3 now we can play bishop to e7, and look at that horrible knight. It doesn't have any good space to go further, and next move black can castle on the king side, and black has a wonderful position along with the bishop pair. So that is pretty much you need to know if your opponent plays bishop cross c6.